From JD Pondon to John Don Vance. Let's take a look.
It would tie, bipartisan opposition, smallest margin since the job was created. You would break that tie. If the nominee can't unite your party, how's he going to lead 3 million people?
Well, look, I think Pete is a disruptor, and a lot of people don't like that disruption. But, Margaret, that disruption is incredibly necessary. If you think about all of those bipartisan, massive votes, we have to ask ourselves, what did they get us? They got us a country where we fought many wars over the last 40 years. We buy airplanes for billions and billions of dollars, terrible cost overruns. The delivery dates are always delayed. So we need a big change. Now, admittedly, there are people who don't like that big change, but it is necessary, and it's explicitly what Donald J. Trump ran on. And I think part of the reason why the American people elected him their 47th president.
So the main objective is changing all of that, that it's going to be Pete alone?
I'd say the main problem the main thing that we want Pete Hegseth to do is to fix the problems at the Department of Defense. And unfortunately, there are many. We've gotten into way too many wars that we don't have a plan for winning. We've gotten into way too many misadventures that we shouldn't have got into in the very first place. And our procurement process, Margaret, is incredibly broken. We're in an era.
Decisions.
Well, of course, they're policy decisions, but they're also logistical and implementation decisions. If you look at where we are with the rise of artificial intelligence, with the rise of...
Yeah, whenever they say procurement, they're talking about AI, and they're talking about drones, and they're talking about how in Ukraine and Israel, they're just like testing out the latest and greatest of the technology. Like things that you would absolutely consider to be horrifying, right? Like things that you would think, oh my God, that would be the most insane thing if the American government used that. Please, let's not do that. That is what he is specifically talking about when he's like, oh yeah, our procurement strategies are bad. I've listened to too many generals and too many tech guys talk about this issue, quote unquote issue. They are like, why don't we have our own lavender targeting system? That's what they mean.
Drone technology and drone warfare. We have to really, top to bottom, change the way that we fund the procurement of weapons, the way that we arm our troops. This is a major period of disruption, and we think Pete Hegseth is the guy to lead the job. Now, there's another element to this, Margaret, too, which is we believe that military morale, at least until the election of President Trump, was historically low. You had the Army missing recruitment goals by tens of thousands of soldiers, and already recruitment is starting to pick up because Pete Hegseth is fundamentally a warfighter's leader at the Department of Defense. He is a guy who sees not through the perspective of the generals or the bureaucrats.
This stuff is so funny, like that the recruitment is low because of gay and woke. Like people just didn't want to join the army because it's like too gay and too woke. Amazing.
He looks at things through the perspective of the men and women that we send off to fight in our wars.
Both the Wall Street Journal and the National Review, conservative publications, as you know, have been critical of Tulsi Gabbard. The Review called her an atrocious nominee who deserves to be defeated. They compared her defense of Edward Snowden, the fugitive who stole U.S. secrets, to an attorney general who thinks the mob gets a bad rap. Her refusal to accept U.S. intelligence findings that Assad gassed his own people, they said, was like a nominee for OMB director not being able to count. Does any of this give you pause putting her in charge of the U.S. intelligence community? Yes or no?
No, Margaret, look, these are publications that attacked Donald J. Trump obsessively, but those publications don't determine who the president is, the American people do.
Him.
And Donald J. Trump is the person who determines who his cabinet is, not these publications that I think, frankly, have lost relevance.
The Senate will
Tulsi
ultimately
Gabbard's,
decide.
Well, the Senate will provide advice and consent, as is its constitutional obligation, but I feel confident that Tulsi Gabbard will ultimately get through. Two things that are important to know about Tulsi. First of all, she is a career military servant who's had a classification at the highest levels for nearly 2 decades. She has impeccable character, impeccable record of service, and she also is a person who I think is going to bring some trust back to the intelligence services. The bureaucrats at our intelligence services have gotten completely out of control. They've been part of the weaponization of our political system, the weaponization of our justice system. We need to have good intelligence services who keep us safe. But part of that is restoring trust in those services, and we think Tulsi is the right person to do it. That's why the president
trust those intelligence services.
She recognizes that the bureaucrats have gotten out of control, and we need somebody there who's going to rein them in and return those services to their core mission of identifying information that's going to keep us safe.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of
Controversial
these
opinion.
orders.
Controversial opinion alert. Tulsi Gabbard is my dark horse in this administration. I think she's so insane, and it literally makes no sense to have her in the position, in any position at all in this administration, but specifically that position. It just makes no sense to me, and therefore she's my favorite pick. Like, I think it's even crazier than Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. I'm not joking. Like, there's just, I think, well, first of all, a lot of Americans, a lot of people have said Tulsi Gabbard is worse than Pete Hegseth, especially like in terms of what her responsibilities are. And I kind of get it, which is why I think it's cool. It just doesn't make any sense why you would have someone like Tulsi Gabbard at any position. Okay? I'm telling you right now, it is one of the most insane choices to make. Because Pete Hegseth is like a regular ass racist, right? He's a Christian dominionist. He's a Christian nationalist. But there is, like, if you're wondering, there are a million guys like that. Okay? Whether they have Jerusalem cross tattoos or not, his perspective is oftentimes reflective of the broader American consciousness and the grand design that America has on the region. Tulsi Gabbard's indecipherable worldview as a member of a like random cult with a leader who presents himself as an Indian man that has created so many unique political positions for Tulsi Gabbard that make F and back. It's mini F. So many unique positions for Tulsi Gabbard that make Ro Khanna look coherent. Okay? It's fascinating. I really want to know. Like, I mean, they even mentioned it. They even mentioned it themselves, right? Like, they were like, Tulsi Gabbard is pro-Assad, right? People oftentimes will, let's just say, exaggerate about someone's perspective, right? But there's a reason why people didn't say Tim Walz is pro-Assad. Tim Walz was an anti-intervention in Syria guy, okay, when he was in the Senate, when he was in the House of Representatives. And I think it's a pretty solid approach to take for American intervention, especially if you're like a fucking Minnesota congressperson, right? But why does nobody say he's a Assadist? Because he's not an Assadist. Tulsi Gabbard is uniquely maybe pro-Assad, while also simultaneously, literally, like taking good positions, like being pro-Edward Snowden, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It never made sense to me why she ran as like the anti-imperialist candidate as a soldier. And then the American government was like, hey, can you go do PSYOPs in Africa for the CIA? Like, just remember, Tulsi Gabbard was like, I'm an anti-interventionist. I hate interventions. Also, if there's a Muslim intervention, I think we should intervene harder. Okay? Like, that was her position. And then she turned around. Yeah, exactly. Because he didn't go to visit Assad and his. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, when people say, oh, this person is an Assadist or whatever, like, sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes they're just doing the classic, like, oh, you're anti-American. Oh, you're anti-American intervention, which means you love the other guys, right? Tulsi Gabbard is one of the people that even I look at and go, maybe she does love the other guys. Okay? There is a degree of involvement that doesn't make sense from my perspective, where I think she was, I'll put it this way, I think she's the OG Jackson Hinkle. Do with that information what you will. I think she's the OG Jackson. She was the Jackson Hinkle prototype. And Jackson Hinkle is like the newer version that the government rolled out. If that makes sense. Because it's like, it's just strange that you go and you visit Assad and his intelligence officers, and then you come back and you have this like insane framework that you're operating off of, where you're like, I'm the anti-intervention candidate, but then while you're the anti-intervention candidate, you're also consistently advocating for, one, more intervention as long as it's against Muslims, okay? And two, the government's like, yeah, we're now going to, we're now going to deploy you to do psyops in Africa. That's weird. Why? It's weird because why did the American intelligence agencies not treat, wait, what the fuck? Is there like a, what is happening here? Is there like a glare on the camera? On the camera lens? Is it, what's happening? Do you see that? Is that a hair or something? What is going on? I'm going to melt down. The light of Allah? Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Like, here, listen to me. Listen. If she is a massive security threat and she's doing a lot of stuff that, like, would make you consider she's a massive security threat, right? Why the fuck did the American military deploy her to Africa to do? Wait, that only got worse. What is that? No. Oh no, I think it's a scratch on the lens. Oh no. Oh no. How did that happen? Oh shit. Surely a filter? No, you're seeing the sun reflection right here. Do you notice? That's because there's a little, I can see it. I can see a scratch on the lens or a crack. I think we might have finally cooked it. March put a UV filter yesterday. I don't think there's a UV filter on this. No, this is just no, he took it off. Is it the lens or the lens filter? I don't know. But I think it's because the background is so blown out. That's why you can see it, but it's fine. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll definitely get like a. You don't see it when my hand is closer to the lens. It's because it's also, you're seeing it because the light is reflecting. Like the light is like beaming right into it because it's blown out. It's fine. You could see it when it was dark out. Oh, really? We'll fix it. No, it's not the one that Will had at the restaurant. All right, let's get back to the Tulsi Gabbard situation. Or let's get back to JD Vance.
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation.
What is this? You don't understand how right you are about Tulsi Hinkle? Wait. Jonah Hill sounds like an insecure baby, but Sarah Brady used to date Jesse Hinkle and hangs out with Tulsi Gabbard. Oh my God. Oh my God, I did not know this. Okay. Dude, why do you straight up ignore ally messages on repeat? Have I offended you? Did you know that Turkish has similarities to Korean, Japanese, and Mongolian? Dog, you literally are. I'm not kidding. We were just, remember earlier today when I was talking about how like people will just like, do you just not like me, bro? Do you remember how earlier in the day I said one of the most annoying things that people do? One of the most annoying things that people do is just like they'll come in and they'll have like something that they're like, you must hear me out. This is of the utmost importance. The situation is dire. You must hear me out. Please stop doing that. Please. Please. It's just like, you know.
Economy is one of the things.
I'm losing it a little bit right now. I don't know why is this so difficult this morning? I don't know what's happening. Asman goes live reacting to the same thing since when he become a right-wing content creator. I don't know, when he got 70,000 people watching him watch a JD Vance interview and go, this is based. It's the golden age for Trump.
Going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years. It's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity. We're going to work with Congress. We're, of course, going to have more executive orders, and we're going to try, the way that you lower prices is that you encourage more capital investment into our country. And you ask specifically, what executive order is going to help lower prices? All of the stuff that we've done on energy, to explore more energy reserves, to develop more energy resources in the United States of America. One of the main drivers of increased prices under the Biden administration is that we had a massive increase in energy prices. Donald Trump has already taken multiple executive actions that are going to lower energy prices, and I do believe that means consumers are going to see lower prices at the pump and at the grocery store, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and while we've done a whole lot, we can't undo all of the damage of Joe Biden's presidency in 4 days.
Well, there are a lot of things that contributed to higher energy prices, and there was record oil and gas production.
Yes, Joe Biden did many terrible things to lead to an increase in prices. I agree, Margaret.
No, but all the things you experience at the grocery store are what people touch and feel. That's what you were talking about, bacon on the campaign trail.
Of course, of course.
Those things, when do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Well, Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel's way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. How do we grow the bacon? Our farmers need energy to produce it. So if we lower energy prices, we are going to see lower prices for consumers, and that is what we're trying to fight for.
Well, the flurry of executive orders, most of them weren't about the economy. Many of them
were, though, Margaret. We had, I think we've taken
promise
over
of tariffs by February 1st.
We've taken over 200 executive actions, some executive orders, other executive actions. Again, this is in less than a week, and a lot of them were focused on the economy, bringing investment into our country and lowering energy prices. We've also focused on safety, restoring public safety, ending weaponization of the Department of Justice. We've done a lot. And I think the president is to be commended for actually coming in and doing something with this incredible mandate the American people gave him. He's not sitting in the Oval Office doing nothing. He's doing the American people's business, and I think they're going to see a lot of good effects from it.
Well, a lot of these announcements have yet to take effect.
Sure.
The president did say he wants to do something with an executive order in relation to federal emergency response. He said he may reform or eliminate FEMA. Instead of sending emergency responders, he may start to send a percentage of money to states to take care of themselves. But, you know, FEMA has specialized expertise that some of these states just don't have in their arsenal. And
I wish
how
that they...
will states who are lower income states, the Mississippis, the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, be able to do this for themselves without federal help?
Well, the president, to be clear, is not saying we're going to leave anybody behind. He's saying that in the way that we administer these resources, some of which is coming from the federal level.
Good morning. Would you like to go to breakfast? Austin, you know I just texted the group chat. And you know my answer is, as always, no. Okay? The answer is no. JD Vance continues to be popular with the Republican Party. I think he easily wins the nomination. I don't see any Democratic opposition beating him. That's wild. I mean, you're not wrong, though. And it's not due to JD Vance. It's not due to JD Vance's like unique level of charisma or anything like that, because he does not have that, obviously. And everything to do with the fact that the Democratic Party is completely incompetent. Well, don't say I didn't ask. No, you ask. I never said you don't ask. You definitely do ask. Why do right-wing commentators often get more views than leftist commentators? I think there's just more interest for it. I don't know. Right-wing commentary oftentimes is corresponding to a lot of people's preconceived biases. And it's never about like taking a deep breath, closing your eyes, imagining a better future. It's easier to consume. I think people take for granted how much I try to make this content palatable. Like, I think left-wing commentary is at its heart. Left-wing commentary, I think at its heart is like kind of boring and lectury and annoying. You know? Right-wing commentary is just like looking at things that most people take for granted and saying it's correct, and that anyone who tells you that it's incorrect is wrong and gay. There's no need for nuance. There's no need for contextualization. There's nothing. You could just like look at the situation and say, based. Egg prices are going to go down. That's based. Right? It's common sense. It's common sense. Once we eliminate the transgenders, then the egg prices are going to go down. It's like there's no through line there. There's no logic there. But it makes people feel comfortable and good. Left-wing commentary, on the other hand, is like everything is falling apart. The world is ending. American capitalism has destroyed the planet. And we are only now starting to recognize the most devastating aspects of unlimited, unrestricted, permanent profit seeking by corporations. And also, on its face, aside from the depressing nature of having a left perspective on issues, I think I think it's just like kind of boring to do a college lecture all the time. You know? I try to do my very best to make it as as appealing as possible. I try to make it as palatable as possible. But there is a lot of I think antagonism towards people that want to make change happen in the opposite direction that society is designed to exist under. That's it. People fear change. People don't have the capacity to dream. People fear change. People don't like it. So it's much easier to just be like, much easier to just sit back and say everything is wrong because of the people that you don't like. They've ruined your life. Everything is wrong because of transgenders. Everything is wrong because of undocumented migrants. And our based God, Trump, is going to kick them out and everything's going to get better.
Which is coming from the state level. We've got to get the bureaucrats out of the way and get the aid to the people who need it most.
But these
Let's
are the
be
first
honest,
responders.
Margaret, you talk about the expertise from FEMA. FEMA in North Carolina, in California, in Florida with some of the hurricanes has often been a disaster. And it's not because we don't have good people at FEMA. It's because bureaucratic red tape and garbage prevents the rapid deployment of resources to the people who need it most.
But the states are now going to have to do this themselves?
The president is trying to encourage us to reform the way that we deliver emergency response in a way that gets resources to the people who need it.
So don't take him literally, is what you're saying.
We should take the president at his word that FEMA needs desperate reform, because it does. Margaret, when I went to North Carolina as VP-elect, but before we were sworn in, people would talk about how FEMA would get resources, food, medicine, water, to a warehouse, but then would have no plan to get it from the warehouse to the people in the mountains who were literally starving and thirsting to death. We can do so much better, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we will.
But they work with the state and local officials.
They often
So
don't work
now
well
it's
enough. And again, that's
going
not
to be on the
because
state
of
and local officials?
No, the FEMA management officials don't work well enough with the state and local officials to get resources to the people who need it. We should expect, and this is, I think, one of the...
Yeah, you know who's going to do that better? Whatever comes next that they're advocating for, which I suspect will be, I don't know, someone close to Trump taking over this process and turning it into a for-profit structure with fat government contracts that will yield tremendous returns on investment, that will absolutely make the for-profit disaster relief industry, that will create the for-profit disaster relief industry that will collapse any kind of relief efforts. FEMA creates a level of centralization that is an absolute necessity. Taking away all of the funds, all the existing funds, and turning them into subsidies for private enterprise is incredibly alarming. Didn't you know that bureaucracy only happens at the federal level, not at the state level? And it's not even bureaucracy. Like, bureaucracy is the thing that these guys point to say is like inefficient across the board, right? Like, that's what's annoying about it. Like, they're like, oh, FEMA's too inefficient. And it's like, disaster relief and recovery is always an arduous process. There are gonna be issues no matter what. Like, making that process more efficient is great, but these guys are not interested in that. Also, corporations have bureaucracy as well. These guys are simply interested in privatizing FEMA and taking the billions of dollars of taxpayer funds that go directly to FEMA and giving it to a friendly, wealthy person. A friendly, wealthy person that will turn FEMA into a for-profit structure.
The fundamental premises.
How can any conservative state governor be in favor of defunding FEMA? They're literally going to be chopping block the moment their state has a national disaster. I mean, how can any conservative politician be in favor of destroying the U.S. Postal Service when the last line of delivery for many rural communities that overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump would no longer get their deliveries? Like, will no longer be able to get their medication if the U.S. Postal Service was also privatized. People don't care. Partially because they're stupid, and partially because they are seeking out short-term profits. It's the same concept. Like, people don't understand that the U.S. Postal Service is not supposed to be a for-profit institution. It's supposed to be a service. It's supposed to be a service that the government offers by need. Okay? And that's precisely the reason why they are the last line of delivery for many communities that UPS doesn't go to, many communities that FedEx doesn't go to. The reason why they don't go there is because it's expensive. And you can't yield profits from a lot of faraway places. Yeah. Wouldn't the USPS fall under essential services? I mean, what do you think FEMA is? Like, FEMA also provides an incredibly important service, especially important because of climate change, ironically enough.
Of President Trump's leadership, the American people should expect more of their government. When there's a terrible disaster, they should expect food, medicine, and water to get to the people who need it. When there's a terrible fire in California, the fire hydrants ought to actually turn on. I am sick of the American people having such low expectations for their government. They should demand more of us because this is the greatest country in the world, and that's what Donald Trump's leadership promises to bring back.
So still count on the federal government, but watch that space. Let me ask you about another area that you campaigned on quite a lot, and there was a flurry of activity on, and that has to do with immigration.
Sure.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic...
Yeah, let me guess. He's heartbroken because, like, undocumented migrants are not children of God and therefore have no place inside of churches to begin with. So if they're actually desecrating churches with their presence, then they must be violently removed. And that is the godly way to approach the situation. As a Catholic adult convert, I think the godly thing to do is not love thy neighbor and practice empathy and understand that they too are children of God, but instead to treat them as hostile beings and kill them. Do not commit the sin of empathy. Yeah. It is a virtue to be evil. It is a virtue to do harm to others, no matter how marginalized, no matter how poor, no matter how tired, and no matter how vulnerable they are. Okay? Yeah, love thy neighbor. How about kill thy neighbor if he's Mexican? That's what God taught me. Thanks, JD.
Ships needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of...
Do not commit the sin of empathy. What did this guy say? Christians, if Christians are right. He said, do not commit the sin of empathy. I believe South Florida would get hit by a major hurricane in the next 5 years and will destroy Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach. It has been 20 years since the last major storm, and climate change and mismanagement have caused massive overflow in the Everglades, meaning flooding will come to both the east and the west. Yeah, Catholicism dictates. My understanding of Catholicism leads me to recognize the reality that refugee resettlement, like working with some of the most vulnerable people is not what the church is supposed to do. What the church is supposed to do instead is work with rich people. Okay. As a Catholic, I maintain the position that the prosperity gospel is the appropriate modus operandi of any sort of religious structure. It's great. It's good stuff. Thank you, JD. Yeah, do not welcome the stranger into your land. Bible shit. Recently, M. Hood and mine's mom. Oh, Andrew episode 1. I was like, who? What do you mean? I realized that you changed your name. Told me that adult Catholic converts and trad people are fucking morons because she has 11 kids and did live a trad country life and said it sucks. She also said we need to deport white Karens because they're miserable bitches. It's true. My Catholic in-law said no more people. We don't want any more people about immigrants. That's crazy.
Biden.
You personally
Let them talk
support them
about
going into
people like
schools
Laken
and
Riley
churches.
who were brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals.
What the sin of empathy tweet popped off because everybody dunked on it, and now I don't know what the actual post looks like. Oh, here. The actual post got deleted. Let's see. Let's see what the real post is. Do not commit the sin of empathy. This snake is God's enemy and yours too. She hates God and his people. You need to properly hate in response. She is not merely deceived, but is a deceiver. Your eye shall not pity. Do not commit the sin of empathy. Like, do not commit the sin of empathy is something that a villain would say in an anime, okay? Like, what do you mean? Do not commit the sin of empathy? Why is this guy posting like a video game villain, dude? Do these guys not realize that, like, they just come across as unironically satanic? Meanwhile, the Church of Satan is doing the opposite, actually practicing, more moral religious values. Anyway, hold on. I'm telling Marsha, look at my stream now. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna send them the photo. Also, he means sympathy, not empathy.
Whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. Let me ask this question, Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
You changed the regulation this week. That's the point of the question.
Exactly.
Giving the authority to go into churches and go into schools.
We empowered law enforcement to enforce
But
the
that
law
also
everywhere
has
to protect
knock-on
Americans.
Effect, a chilling effect, arguably, to people to not send their kids to school.
Yeah. Famously, the violent murderers in school are the undocumented migrants and not like the mentally ill American children that can easily pick up their dad or mom's weapon and do a school shooting. Yeah, those are the violent the violent people that must be removed. Anyway, good stuff. Thank you, JD. Killing
I
it.
hope it has a chilling
In the
effect on
churches,
illegal
you think
immigrants
the
coming
U.S.
into our
Conference
country.
of Catholic Bishops are actively hiding criminals from
I think the U.S.
law enforcement?
Conference of Catholic Bishops has frankly not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement that the American people voted for. And I hope, again, as a devout Catholic, that they'll do better.
There are 5 legal challenges already to one of the other immigration actions, the order on birthright citizenship. A federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan, I think you'd agree, has some conservative credentials,
Sure.
paused the order to end birthright citizenship, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. How do you reconcile this challenge to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution?
So I obviously disagree with that judge, and these things, some of them will be litigated. That's the nature of our constitutional system. But here's the basic idea of President Trump's view on this. If you are a lawful permanent resident or a legal immigrant who plans to stay, your children, of course, should become American citizens. But let's say you're the child of an ambassador. You don't become...
But that's not part of it.
Well, that is
already a carve-out
an
having to deal
important
with kids of
principle.
diplomats.
But we're saying that carve-out should apply to anybody who doesn't plan to stay here. If you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't become an American citizen. If you're an illegal alien.
He's like, the Constitution is but a piece of paper. Okay? Who cares? Which is, I mean, I agree. It's just that conservatives only use that mentality for the worst policies you've ever seen. Incredibly frustrating stuff. Like never a new interpretation for the Second Amendment, operating on the false interpretation of the Second Amendment, only offering new interpretations or just outright defense of unconstitutional policies when it comes down to undermining some of the most positive aspects of the American government. Just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
And come here temporarily, hopefully, your child does not become an American citizen.
I'm going to look
by
at the Colombian
virtue of just
president in a
having
second.
been
Hold
born on American soil. It's a very basic principle in American immigration law that if you want to become an American citizen and you've done it the right way, and the American people and their collective wisdom have welcomed you into our national community, then you become a citizen. But temporary residents, people who come in here, whether legally or illegally, and don't plan to stay, their children shouldn't become American citizens. I don't know any country that does that or why we would be different.
Oh, well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by...
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers, but just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first, and that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would we make those people's children American citizens permanently?
I want to ask you about refugee admissions, which were just suspended by the president. That has nothing to do with the U.S. border. Refugee screening takes 18 to 24 months to go through. They are heavily vetted. Left literally at the airport this week were thousands of Afghans, some of whom had worked with the United States government and were promised to come here. When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These
It's
people are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly, he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other.
Yeah. Good stuff. Just straight up. In a country where the overwhelming majority of domestic terror incidents occur in the hands of American citizens with political opinions that oftentimes resemble, reflect, if not completely mirror, the likes of JD Vance, far-right anti-government extremists, white nationalists, white supremacists. JD Vance tries to make it seem as though refugees that go through a 2-year process of thorough vetting that have oftentimes played a formative role in American military operations are actually the real terrorists. That's crazy. It doesn't matter. It's just complete falsehood. It's completely ridiculous. Oftentimes I explain racism as a puzzle piece. In order to solve a puzzle, right, you have to put pieces together. And there's always this one piece that's missing from the puzzle, and racists will just slam on racism as that puzzle piece. They'll just be like, yeah, the real secret sauce is just racism. Yeah, nobody wants violence. Nobody wants terror, obviously. Why would anybody want that? That's the most insane concept ever, right? Wait, what? It's not effing for me. Did it actually F? I'm confused. Anyway, regardless. Nobody wants nobody wants terrorism. Nobody wants violence to occur on U.S. soil. So Republicans would look to that situation and say, yeah, well, the violence and the terror and the issues that are happening in America are happening because of what? Well, because of, don't look at the data, because of Muslims and refugees. Okay, that's what it is. I promise. Please don't look at the data. Please don't recognize what you see in front of your eyes. And for many people, they don't actually recognize it, because when a white dude does when a neo-Nazi white dude does an act of terror, people just see it as a lone wolf. People just see it as a little guy who's crazy. But when a Muslim person does the same, they're like, oh, all Muslims are this way. This one just simply could not hold back his violent desires. Stop generalizing all Republicans based on unfactual information. Explain what you mean right now. Because I'm not generalizing all Republicans. I'm talking about the attitude that this Republican, who is the vice president right now, is demonstrating. One that every Republican voted for, by the way. The fundamental principle behind mass deportation advocacy comes from a falsehood. The notion that undocumented migrants are coming from all around the world, from different backgrounds, different demographics, doesn't matter, different creeds, different ethnicities, but they all have one mind, and that is to do crime in the United States of America, and therefore must be violently apprehended and deported from this country. Okay? Do you or do you not agree with that? Do you think that there is, one, a massive issue with undocumented migrant crime? Do you think that undocumented migrants are responsible for a shit ton of crimes? Let's start there, Garrett. Yes. Okay. So you do agree. I love that this guy was like, dude, what? Stop generalizing Republicans. And then illegally entering the country is a crime. Yeah, so is jaywalking, dumbass. Should I kill you if I catch you walking? Should I put you in a detention facility? You know? So is not stopping at a stop sign. Like, not coming to a full stop at a stop sign is a crime. Do you think all crimes are the same across the board? You're like, listen, I don't understand, dude. This guy's like, this guy's doing the I see no color, but for the law, you know? You don't understand, brother. I see no difference, okay? People who accrue child sexual abuse material and people who don't come to a full stop at the stop sign are both in direct violation of the law. And therefore, I'm law blind. I'm law blind. Okay. Who says Republicans want immigrants dead? I think you are hyper focusing on one aspect of my commentary and failing to comprehend that deportation, no matter what, is an incredibly violent act. It doesn't have to immediately lead to death or whatever. And you think that it's hyperbolic. Okay. And when I'm doing commentary, I am being hyperbolic, although Republicans do say that all the time. Having said that, however, if you recognize, as I do, the reality that crossing a border to come and earn a living in the United States of America is not a severe crime, right? That is worthy of the most severe kinds of punishment outside of death, I guess. Because being deported is an incredibly violent protocol, an incredibly violent punishment for something that is not as severe a crime as I think you would also recognize. Trump's executive order targeted people with violent crimes, not just going after all immigrants. Then we should do more help people come in here legally. Republicans don't disagree with that. That's so funny that you're literally watching the vice president talk about not just like legal immigrants that they are denying their actual day in court, but even refugees that have already gone through the vetting process, like a thorough vetting process. And you're like, no, you don't understand. We just got to make it easier. Like, what are you talking about? This is a person currently advocating to not ease that process, but to make it impossible. The process is already incredibly difficult, incredibly arduous, incredibly complicated. And he is saying, cut it out. No more of that at all. He also just said, no more birthright citizenship. Like, do Republicans not hear words that are coming out of the mouths of their favorite politicians, the politicians that they voted for? Do they just not understand that words have meaning, that policy has consequences? It's very interesting. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I genuinely don't get it. Or do they think we're just as stupid, and that if they just consistently maintain this position that like all of the things that you're hearing from this administration are actually not bad, but good, and serve a higher purpose that you simply cannot comprehend, while simultaneously feeling this deep shame that you're advocating for ultimately very violent things, right? You know, the reality will be different. Very strange behavior. Like, that doesn't make sense. I think that there's a lot more honesty for a Republican who says, yeah, man, I don't fuck with them. I think they're scary. I think they're barbaric, and my culture is superior to theirs. My race is superior to theirs, right? Like, I think that is the uh, underlying worldview at play here. That's the underlying worldview of white nativist policies in general. That is an infinitely more honest approach to the subject matter than to sit there and be like, no, you don't understand. Like, we want what's best for migrants. And that's the reason why we have to literally violently apprehend them on the streets in their homes and put them into detention facilities and then, ship them out of the country immediately. That's what's good for them. Okay. We also simultaneously must no longer allow birthright citizenship, something that has been constitutionally protected, enshrined in the law, the Constitution that we care so much about. You don't understand. It's better for them. You can't have a civilization on other people's children. We must protect the future. We must protect and secure a future existence for white children. This is just a normal approach. You don't understand. That's not racist to say. I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little guy who's fucking emulating Jared Taylor. I'm just a little guy saying 14 words in succession. I mean, it's just 14 words, one behind the next. What's the problem? I'm just a little guy. I wasn't Sig Heiling. Come on. You're crazy. I just, I have an autistic hyperfixation, and sometimes my body just moves in that way. It's just a little guy. It's so indecent to just like constantly advocate for obviously bad policies that are genuinely harmful to millions of people. Policies that stem from a complete falsehood. The notion that undocumented migrants are responsible for a massive amount of the crime that Americans experience. And then turn around and act like this is actually just a good thing, and that like you should appreciate it, and you shouldn't be so mean to those who advocate for this kind of stuff. I'm not here to be an apologist for everything a politician says. My point was it's harmful for you to generalize all Republicans' viewpoints. It's just us versus them ideology. No, dude. You see, the difference is I have empathy for all people, including Republicans. So even though a Republican might be a scared little moron who is terrified of their own shadow and thinks that like cities are making, I don't know, the children gay, and also there's crime happening at any moment in a city, and that undocumented migrants are actually coming in to murder every white American or whatever. Okay, I still believe that they deserve health care, and I still believe that they should get free health care and also better education overall. Because if you address those two issues and also offer permanent shelter, they're going to be a little bit better educated and less susceptible to this kind of right-wing framing on issues. Okay? That's the difference. I recognize that, most Republicans, lumpen proles or reactionaries in general of varying different backgrounds that are all a part of the same working class, have the same exact class interests. And I want conditions overall, regardless. He has Asperger's. He's incapable of understanding how to correctly convey emotions. He thought that throwing his heart out to the crowd would convey that he's appreciative. Elon did not Roman salute. That's so funny. I watch you for years, for time to time, and Zach for a long time. You know what? I don't know why, but I'm starting to shift in your way of seeing the world. Like I loved Elon, Zach, etc. Now I don't know, thinking they're frauds, too right, etc. So I'm getting normal. Yeah, I think you're recognizing certain things. Better late than never, it's so funny to say, I'm not here to apologize. I'm not here to be an apologist and then be like, a day after Elon Musk gave a speech, 2 days after Elon Musk did Holocaust jokes, and then a day after Elon Musk gave a speech at the AfD, neo-Nazi party of Germany's rally, telling the German population not to feel guilty about the Holocaust. This guy still is like, you don't understand. He's just a little guy. He's just a neurodivergent minor. You know? Simultaneously, the wealthiest man on the planet. Okay? And supposedly, this man that is brilliant, but also a little guy. Just a little guy that's dumb as hell. And just autistically did the Sig Heil.
American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's you're always you're permanently different, right? So I guess it's not a So if you're a refugee or not, right? If you're a refugee or not, like there's a difference. When an American is radicalized and they engage in an act of terror, okay? That's different than when a refugee is radicalized in America and engages or plots an act of terror, okay? That refugee is permanently representative of every other migrant that comes into the country because they're a hive mind. They're a parasitic force, okay? They're a hive mind. They're a parasitic force, and there is an intractable quality, an unchanging quality to them. I wonder what it is. Yeah, there's no assimilating, okay? You are permanently an outsider if you're a refugee. There's just something about it. There's just something about it. Maybe, I don't know, their racial disposition. Hasan, choose your poison. You have many people who listen to you, yet you deceive them into believing Democrats are innocent, good people with good policies. They don't even follow through on what they claim to stand for. Stop being so hard-headed. Yeah, I famously always say that. Yeah, that sounds a lot like me, man. You seem to have watched me quite a bit. Sarcastic, by the way. I don't know if you can pick up on context clues or not, but that's funny that you. Yeah, people will come in here and just say anything.
Ago, you were on Fox News and you said if you protested peacefully on January 6th and had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. Did you counsel the president against these blanket pardons for 1,500 people?
Well, Margaret, I noticed,
including those who committed violence.
Margaret, I noticed that you cut off the thing that I said immediately after that. The full quote is that, of course, there are gray areas. And here's the nature of the gray area. Merrick Garland's Department of Justice denied constitutional protections in the prosecutions. There were double standards in how sentences were applied to the J6 protesters versus other groups. What the president said consistently on the campaign is that he was going to look at a case-by-case basis.
This is blanket.
And that's exactly what we did. We looked at 1,600 cases, and the thing that came out of it, Margaret, is that there was a massive denial of due process of liberty, and a lot of people were denied their constitutional rights. The president believes that. I believe that, and I think he made the right decision.
Daniel Rodriguez used an electroshock weapon against a policeman who was dragged out of the defensive line by plunging it into the officer's neck. He was imprisoned, sentenced to 12 years, 7 months. He got a pardon. Ronald Maccabee hit a cop while wearing reinforced brass knuckle gloves, and he held one down on the ground as other rioters assailed the officer for over 20 seconds, causing a concussion. If you stand with law enforcement, how can you call these people unjustly imprisoned?
Margaret, you're separating, there's an important issue here. There's action on the 6th, and we're not saying that everybody did everything perfectly. And then what did Merrick Garland's Department of Justice do in unjustly prosecuting well over 1,000 Americans in a way that was politically motivated?
Is violence like that against a police officer ever justified?
Violence against a police officer is not justified, but that doesn't mean that you should have Merrick Garland's weaponized Department of Justice expose you to incredibly unfair process, to denial of constitutional rights, and frankly, to a double standard that was not applied.
Are my eyes and my ears deceiving me? Is JD Vance saying violence against law enforcement officers is never justified, but interesting, crazy. Crazy. But some of these dudes deserve it. You know? Some of these dudes, some of these cops need to get their shit pushed in, okay? J Cab Vance. Yeah. A Cab, baby. Yeah, there's a little bit of nuance here. You're so stupid. There's nuance to beating on the cops. And you just simply can't understand. Okay. The J6ers had more funding for public defenders and had their rights recognized in a way most don't. Did you know JD Vance is the VP? No, I'm just now finding out. No, I'm just now finding out that he's the vice president. Still shocked about it though. Audio's clipping. What's happening? Is it messing up again? Stuttering? Hold on. I think I'm going to have to fix this real quick. January 6th is a dead political talking point. Give us some airtime for Democratic wine moms, but I don't think it should be any main point to make. People want to vote for the Democratic Party. It's not. But it'll never not be funny to watch the incoming Republican administration's vice president openly state on television that, yes, I think that restart OBS, maybe restart PC, we wait. Yeah, dude. Sounds like a good idea. Thanks for the suggestion, man. It's really annoying. Yes, it is. It's impossible not to find this unimaginably annoying. If any Democrat, can you imagine if a member of the squad was like, yeah, some cop beaters deserve freedom? Like, that would get played in perpetuity. It would be over. Your political career and your aspirations would be done. Okay? That's it. You're done. It would be on Fox News all the time. Literally nonstop. Nonstop. It's so frustrating. It does piss me off. I'm not gonna lie. The bandwidth that Republicans have to say whatever the frick they want, and the obvious hypocrisy of it all, is very frustrating. I don't like it. It makes me mad. It annoys me. You understand? They just can't get away with whatever they want. No repercussions. They can say whatever they want. They can get away with whatever they want. No repercussions whatsoever. And I say this as someone who despises the Democratic Party for their ineptitude, their incompetence, the way they operate, how awful they are. Like, it's still obvious that Republicans just like can say whatever they want, and it's okay. He's literally advocating for dudes who beat cops like a goddamn prison abolitionist.